Chelsea Jensen here. Today we are going to be making some sourdough French toast, some sausage and bacon frittata, and some hash browns. So let's start by cooking up our bacon for our frittata, and then we'll throw in our sausage and then some vegetables for that, and then we'll cook up our potatoes in our kind of residual bacon grease here. So I've got about a half a pound of bacon, and then we're gonna snip it up and cook it up. That way we have nice little bacon bits in our delicious frittata on there. And then we're going to use some of our leftover sourdough from our dinner last night. I baked up 2 loaves, baked up a traditional loaf and then a cinnamon swirl loaf, which I think will be making excellent sourdough, which we have right over here on there. So looking gorgeous sitting there on there. But our first one, the lighter colored one, is our traditional. And then the second one, which has a darker color from the cinnamon, is our cinnamon swirl loaf. And they were amazing. So let me get this over here. Give my hands a quick wash. And let's get this bacon going. Okay. While the bacon is starting to cook up, I'm going to prep up my onions, my peppers, and my potatoes. The potatoes, again, are going to be for like a home fry, like a little hash brown that we'll have as well. And I'll save some of the onions for that. We'll actually cook them all up at the same time, but we'll have part of them will go, I'll like reserve some of the vegetables to go in with our potatoes here. I take off a little bit more of that onion. There we go. And when our bacon is done crisping up, I'm going to throw in my sausage, just give it a toast. I just have pre-cooked sausage that I'm going to break up into our frittata. Those are sticking to me. And then we have some sharp cheddar cheese that I'll grate into it as well. I'm going to dice up my onions fairly small. That way they're just little bits of onions in there, but will add great flavor. And I'll do the same with our sweet peppers. So I've got those done. Take off these tops. And I'm just using simple vegetables, kind of keeping it simple so that I can put them in both. But with a frittata, you can really, like, sky's the limit. You can add in spinach, broccoli, zucchini, so many different vegetables. Mushrooms work great for it. But again, I'm just keeping it really simple today since I'm going to use them in my potatoes as well. Grab out my seeds, kind of debeard them. And I'm going to give my bacon a little toss here once I get these sliced. Let me grab my tongs. I'm going to turn it down just a smidge now that it's nice and hot and toasty in this pan. There we go. So I'm going to turn it down to about a 5 now. I always like to heat my pan up nice and hot, and then I'll turn it down that way. It's not too cold. It really gets the fat rendering down faster. There we go. I'm going to spread it out. That way it can cook up a little bit faster on here. I have my oven preheating to 350 because that's what we're going to cook our frittatas at. And I'm going to do my frittatas in mini loaves, so they'll cook a little bit faster, but then they'll be individual serving sizes, which is great for, you don't have to like slice them up. But I find that it cooks a little bit faster, which means your egg doesn't dry out on the edges as much. And if you have leftovers, they heat up really well. This is a great item that you can make and cook ahead, like preheat the next day, like so you could cook a batch and then just reheat over the week, for a quick like breakfast on the go. And they're delicious on there. But we're a big family, so I'm making 8 of them, and all 8 will get eaten up. Give these a nice quick small dice on it. And again, these vegetables our half will go in our frittata and half will go in our hash browns. And one more. So we've got our sweet peppers and our onions. Move those to the side. Have those all kind of diced up and cooked up here. And then we are going to dice up our potatoes in just a second. And move these up to the top. But let me get my bacon a quick stir. And then we're going to make our custard base for our French toast. And then we'll dip them and let them sit. And then we'll start to kind of cook them off on our griddle. And then I'll be interested to see whether the kids, because I always put a little bit of cinnamon and sugar in my French toast batter, the little custard base for it. So I'll be interested to see if they can notice the cinnamon swirl, if it has a stronger flavor. If they like it better, I think they will, because it's delicious. Okay. So let's get that. I'm going to get these potatoes. Because I want to cook them up, they're going to be hash browns. I'm going to actually dice them up fairly small, smaller than when I make like fried potatoes for dinner. So really like small little dice things. They are a Yukon Gold, and I think I actually have one russet in here. Just kind of a collection of potatoes in my fridge that I wanted to use up. So I'm going to dice them nice small. So almost like, like those bed and breakfast hash browns you get. Slippery potato there. So, and this will allow them to cook up nice and fast. So once we're done with the cooking up the bacon and the veggies, this will cook up quicker than if you leave them big. And you'll get more crispy edges. Now, if you want your potatoes to cook even faster, you can grate them up and then they'll cook really fast. Take off that part. We've got a purple part of our potato. Here we go. Get our bacon stirring. Now, when you pre-cut your bacon up like this, it's going to cook much faster and crisp up much faster than the whole pieces. So just make sure you stir it frequently so that you don't overcook certain parts of it. There we go. And get these, and that way I'll have everything just ready to kind of throw in. Get our prep on there. This potato must have frozen. When potatoes freeze, they turn purple on the inside, which makes them no bueno. Apparently, all my potatoes froze outside. We had like a little frost, and sometimes they just get really cold. Okay. Dice these up nice and small. And I'm going to grab one more. I once made the mistake. So I used to, just growing up, I always just left them, when we moved here, we always just left them outside, our bags of potato, just outside on like the step. And then I noticed we kept getting this freezes, and then our whole bag of potatoes would be ruined. And if their potatoes are frozen, or get sweated, they turn purple inside, just kind of like if they're left and exposed to it. And sometimes I notice when it gets really, really cold, my refrigerator outside will then freeze them, and it will ruin a whole batch of potatoes because I keep them in like this drawer in my refrigerator. And we go through potatoes pretty fast, so they're typically not in the refrigerator for more than a week or so. I'm going to grab, I think I have another potato in here since we lost two to it on there. I do. Let me give this a quick wash. But I now always try to make sure in the winter, you know how your refrigerators can have like temperature control. In the winter, I make sure I turn it down to, or turn the temperature to the warmest setting so it doesn't get too cold in there for my outdoor refrigerators, because the garage will keep it nice and cool. Okay, let's get these last little bits. And then our bacon is just about ready to come out. Well, not really come out. We're going to keep it in there. We're just about ready to get some friends in there. Get our onions in there and our peppers and our sausage. So I'm going to turn this down a little bit slower. And I'm going to pop in a couple sausage patties, and then we'll break them up once they start to cook. Since I'm making 8 little frittatas, I'm going to put in 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 sausage patties in there. That way each frittata will have a patty in it, essentially. I'll pop those out to kind of cook in there. I made sure I didn't completely crisp up my bacon so that it can crisp up and then kind of the residual bits, but not the remaining part of it. And let's get working on our egg batter while this kind of remaining part cooks for our French toast. We'll whip it up together and then we'll get it going. So I'm going to slide my 2 loaves up here. We'll get those cut in just a second. I think I'm going to need, we've got 2 good size here. I'm going to start with 6 eggs and see if that gets us enough. So I'm going to take 6 eggs in here, because French toast is a little bit of a heartier bread than like a brioche or a soft one, which I think it's going to take a little bit more of a soak in it than a softer like a brioche, which makes lovely French toast. But I think this is going to crisp up nice and give a little bit of a form to it. So we're going to do 6 eggs in here. And then I'm going to be using whole milk, but a lot of times I'll use cream or half and half, but I'm out of those. So we're going to add in a splash of whole milk. And let me get a little pan right here. I got to get my little butter melting. I need a little bit of butter to add in here as well. Should melt up pretty quick since it's nice and soft. But I'm going to add in about 2 tablespoons of melted butter, and then some vanilla, cinnamon, and a little bit of sugar to add just a slight sweetness to it. Just kind of help it out. You're going to get most of your sweetness to your French toast from the syrup that you add onto it, but I do love to get just a little bit extra added on it. Let's get our sausages flipped here. We got some of them already starting to toast up. And once you can start, they're frozen, but once I can start to kind of break them apart, I will, because I don't want to leave them whole. And then we'll throw in our veggies, our onions, and our peppers to start sauteing up. And then we can make the base for our frittatas, which won't take very long to bake up in the oven. And then we'll get our hash browns a-frying. Okay, got our butter melted. I'm going to add in about a teaspoon of vanilla, which I find is right around a capful of my bottle here. And about a teaspoon of cinnamon. Cinnamon has a natural sweetness to it, so we'll add, again, additional sweetness to the batter for it, or our little custard base. And we're going to add a little bit of sugar. You don't need a whole lot, but I do. It's just like with my pancakes and my waffles. I just like to add a little bit of sugar, about 2 tablespoons. And then we'll get our butter in here. And then we're going to kind of mix this together. And then we'll cut our bread and we'll dip each slice of bread in our kind of our custard batter. Okay. So now that my sausages are starting to get soft, I'm going to break them apart. And then we'll start throwing in our onions and our peppers.
Of Marianne's ingredients.
Thank you, Marianne. We appreciate that. There we go. And there. Break this up. Ooh, on an exciting note, guys, my car's finally fixed. You know how right before Christmas our engine essentially exploded. We were part of that recall that said was okay, but apparently wasn't okay. So, they ended up replacing our whole engine with a brand new engine. So finally fixed. So we're gonna get our car back, which is nice because we've been scramming everybody into this wee tiny car, which fits but is not as comfortable. And when you're a big family in a car where you're used to spacious to we're all snugged in like sardines, it's very exciting to have it back. And of course, when they're back, they're like, we put your engine in covered by the warranty, but there's, oh, you can do this, and this. And I'm like, oh, so I can add this, and this. But I was like, well, since you're in the shop, we'll add in our brakes and all that jazz. But I'm going to be happy to have it back and on the road. And my daughter will be happy to have her car back because that's what we've been using, because she has my old car, which she's been practicing driving on. And I've been driving around with her car that has all those crazy new drivers on. And I was really crazy when I bought all these little bumper sticker cars thing for it. Like, I put like 20 of them on there. And so it's kind of embarrassing now that I was driving it around, because I'm sure everybody was like, oh, that's the new driver. And I'm like, not my car. But I'm very happy to be getting it back. Here we go. So I've mixed in our kind of 2 tablespoons of melted butter here. So we have our nice kind of really rich custard base for our Frenchy toast. Before we start dipping and cutting, let's get our onions and our peppers in here so that we can start whisking up and getting our frittatas in the oven. Our sausages are all chopped up. Let's get our onions in. I'm going to turn up our heat a little bit, and we'll get our peppers in. Get a little bit, because they will continue to cook in the oven as well. But I like to say, just like with my omelets, always give your chopped up veggies a good saute, because it just brings out some of that bitterness of an uncooked veggie and just gives you a nicer overall flavor. So we'll let this saute for just a few, and then we can whip together the rest for our lovely frittatas. Bring my eggs over there for that. And I'm going to start warming up my griddle, because it always takes a hot minute before it gets nice and warm to cook up our French toast. And then I'm going to start cutting our sourdough bread. So here is our gorgeous cinnamon swirl. You can see the little swirls in there. So during the lamination process, that's when you coat it with the cinnamon and cinnamon sugar to give it that nice kind of swirl effect on it. And then here's our gorgeous regular loaf. We baked these up last night. Still very soft and delicious.
Do you know what's for dinner yet?
So tonight for dinner, we're actually going to be going over to my parents and having takeout and spending the night with them. But we are going to be going on late tonight, because I'm going to be prepping up some sourdoughs for tonight. So doing some different loaves. I think I'm going to make a bunch of like mini bowls, because I love to do my little mini bowls on there. And then I'm going to bake up some snacks for the week on there to kind of get a head start on there, so that I have stuff for the lunches for everybody. So we'll do a late night tonight, but no dinner on it. Here, so there. We've got 3 on here, which really is like 6 pieces of French toast, because sourdough these slices are huge.
Do you ever freeze your sourdough?
There's never any sourdough left. Between our family and my parents, that's 9 people. And so there's just never any sourdough left. And if I have any extra, I either turn it into sandwiches or croutons. So I've never needed to freeze it. Okay, we'll save these because these are still delicious for toast and deliciousness. So I'll pop these back over here. I'm gonna give our onions and our peppers a quick stir. Smells good. And then I'm going to dip my sourdough, and then we'll start working on our frittata.
How often do you need to feed your starter since you use it so much?
So depending on when I'm making bread or how often I'm using it, I could feed it every day, but sometimes I'd feed it every 3 days. So it's anywhere between 1 and 3 days because I leave mine on the counter. But it could be as frequent as every day on there. It just really depends on how much baking I'm in and how much I'm using it. So we're dipping in. This is my cinnamon swirl. I'm giving it a light dip in there. We're going to let it soak up in. And then sometimes I'll do a double dip on my first ones because I always like to make sure I have enough of my batter to go through. And I try not to over dip because I've done that before. Now these are pretty hefty French toast ones. So I might even cut them in half before I saute or start cooking them up, but I might just leave them whole. Let's see. Now with a brioche, which is a regular bread, they're softer ones. The nice thing about the sourdough is it can hold your custard a lot better. It's going to keep its form a lot longer. You don't have to worry about it kind of falling apart on the transition. But you do need to let it soak a little bit longer than a regular one so that the custard mixture can really permeate the whole one for it.
Can you go over what the mixture is?
So for this one, I used about 6 eggs, maybe 2 tablespoons of sugar, a teaspoon of vanilla, a teaspoon of cinnamon, and 2 tablespoons of melted butter, and about like 1/4 a cup of whole milk. Now, a lot of times I'll use cream or half and half, but I was out of those. I typically prefer them because they make a richer custard, but you can always use milk. Just add in melted butter. Okay. Again, I'm doing these double dips to make sure I get lots of this soaked up in here because it's like a sponge. Beautiful. And then again, let them sit so they can kind of soak all the way through so that you don't just have the good base on the top of your French toast, but that it's all the way through. Okay, I'm going to turn this down just a smidge. We'll spoon these out. This is our vegetable and our meat mixture for our frittatas. We've got sausage, bacons, peppers, onions in here. I'm going to whisk up my eggs and we'll get ready to pop these in the oven and add in some cheese. So I do just an egg per frittata. So I just need 8 eggs because with all the vegetables and the meat, it's going to fill them right up. You don't need any more. So they'll look big, but by the time you have them, they kind of grow and they're just wonderful. So one more. So I've got our 8 eggs in here. You're going to add in a splash of milk, cream, or half and half. Cream or half and half will give you a richer base, but this is going to help fluff up your eggs. You don't need a whole lot, just enough to give you a little fluff to it. Grab a fork here. We're going to whisk it up. There. So we've got our nice base. And then I'm going to grate in some cheese. And we'll mix in our vegetables and spices.
You have a question? Why do you use melted butter for the custard?
Because I didn't have half and half or cream, and I needed to add in that fat to give it a richer flavor to kind of hold its base. So a lot of times if you don't have half and half or cream, that's a way you can make a substitute because that's essentially what's been skimmed out is the fat of the milk. So it's just a way to add it back in to give you that nice base and richness to it. Now, it's not a perfect substitute, but it gets you pretty close. And that's really so that it kind of crisps up nicely on the griddle and everything. Okay, let's grate in some cheese. I'm going to also grate in some on top of it, but we're going to put in about, around like a half a cup or so. Don't go too cheesy or your eggs won't set right. And I think that's a big mistake a lot of people make is they put too much cheese in, but the cheese will weigh it down and it will prevent your eggs from getting, fluffing up. So there's about a half a cup, and then we'll sprinkle some on top. So let's get our veggies and all that in there. I'm going to leave some residual in there, so I'm going to use a slotted spatula to kind of scoop them up because I don't want all of that grease necessarily in there because we're going to fry our potatoes on there. We can put them in hot. It will just start the cooking of the egg process. And don't worry about getting every little pepper or whatnot because we're going to cook our potatoes in these. Okay. Got all.
What kind of sausage did you use?
So I just have these frozen little sausage links that are sausage patties that I put in there and just kind of cooked them up. So they work really great for it. And I have them around. And add in a little bit of butter to help our potatoes since most of the bacon grease is what is out. And then we're going to get our potatoes cooking up in here so that they can start getting a cook up on them. And then our skillet looks like it's getting nice and hot, which is perfect. I'm going to turn it down now to about a 4. And it looks like last 2 pieces. There we go. Let's get those back in here. And give this a quick stir up, coat it with all of that nice flavorings in there because you don't want the bottom potatoes will soak up all of that grease and you'll get none for the top ones, which means they won't get crispy. So make sure you stir your potatoes well and coat them up. And then I'm going to put a lid on these so that they steam up just a little bit and cook just a smidge faster. Take that piece out because it has lots of skin on it. I'm going to turn my heat up to about a 5. And let's get our lid on here. Let the steam cook up. Now I've got my meat and my egg and my cheese in here. Now we need to add in a little bit of garlic, salt, and pepper because you want to make sure you season it up so it's not bland. You're going to want about 1.5 teaspoons, so a good shake over. You could also add in some onion powder or like green onions if you have it. About 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. I think I'm almost out, so let me see. There we go. We're going to mix this up. And then we're going to spoon it into our little frittata, our little mini loaves. Now this kind of gets a little messy. So, and there's really no best way to do it. You know what? I actually think a ladle might work better for this. So maybe there is a good way to do this. Oh, you know what? Scratch that. I forgot to oil this down. That is a must. You must oil it or spray it down or they will not release out and then you'll have a big mess. So let me wipe this clean for it. So even though you have residual oil in there from the bacon grease, you need to spray it down.
Was the mini loaf pan in your Amazon store?
Yes, it should be in there. I remember I added in there a while back. I love this one. He works so great. Had it forever. I got it at like a little store, but it's like a Wilton and it is amazing. Okay, sprayed it all down. That way it will kind of come out nicely. I'm going to go through. I'm going to put a ladle in each one and then we'll go back over and even it out because again, we want them to be right around the same amount so they cook up evenly. But as you can see, even with just one egg, this is going to give you, and they're going to puff up, it's going to give you a good amount of base for it. Let me slide that base in there. And then I'm going to go through, even it out, see which ones need a little bit more love. And then we're going to just grate a little bit of cheese on top to give you that nice kind of slightly cheesy crust. And that's again why I don't put as much cheese in the base of it, because but you can also add in, if you want to go like healthier, you could add in spinach, go mushrooms, zucchini, broccoli, kale, use different types of cheeses. Really, the sky's the limit. This is such a versatile thing to make. You can use egg whites too. They kind of all work well for it. So we're going to do just a couple little grates of cheese over it. Again, I don't like to go too heavy because the cheese, again, will weigh it down and prevent as much of the pop of the egg as you want, but a little goes a long way. Now, just before you pop it in, just make sure any pieces of cheese that you have on your little metal pan, just push it to the side. That way you don't have to do as much cleaning later. Let's go pop these in the oven at 350. And these are going to cook for, depending on how heavy your base is, between 15 and 20 minutes. You can also do this in like a pie dish. It takes a little bit longer, closer to 20 minutes for that, or a griddle. Again, those tend to take a little bit longer, which is why I like the mini loaf pans. I'm going to set my timer for 15 and we'll check on it. You just want to make sure when you take it out that they're got a nice firmness to them, no jiggle, because the jiggle means the eggs aren't cooked all the way through. But you, again, don't want to overcook them or they won't taste as delicious. Okay, my griddle should be nice and hot. I have it now on a 3. So I heated it up and it's going to be nice and hot. I'm going to take my butter and just smush it through here. And we're going to start cooking our French toast. These are big honkin' French toast, so I can only cook a few at a time on here. And we'll cook them. But again, I soak them and I let them sit. Because this is sourdough, you can't just dip and cook on like you can with a brioche or some of those sourdough or like breads that are thinner, where if you soak them too long, they'll fall apart. With a sourdough, you need to give it that sit time in there. Okay. Beautiful. We've got our nice kind of fry up on our eggs, or not our eggs, our potatoes here. Giving them a nice thing. I put the lid on it, which is going to help the potatoes get soft a little bit faster. And but then I'll do my final cooking part with the lid off, which will allow them to get rid of all of that excess moisture and continue to crisp up. And then we'll add our spices at the end. I don't add my spices until the very end because I don't want them to burn on the bottom of my pan. Because then it won't taste as nice. But just, you know what? I think we'll have plenty of time. We don't need our lid for the remainder part of this. Cook here. Let me grab a spatula. Beautiful. Now look at that gorgeous French toast here. This one still needs a little bit longer to get that nice golden one. I'm going to rotate it. And I'm going to turn up my temperature just a little bit. Once you put them on, it's going to bring your griddle pan down, but I had it nice and hot. Don't put your French toast on a cold griddle or it won't get that nice. It will be more of a soggy. It's just like when you're cooking any fried chicken or anything like that. We want it hot so that it sears it off right away so you get that nice crispy edge on it. Okay. Beautiful. So there we have we flipped over, looking gorgeous. There's our next round of our French toast. I'm going to grab a little plate out here so that when we're done with this, we can start loading it off. And the nice thing about these being big honkin' French toast is they're going to stay warm and nice for a while, but they'll be perfect with a large family. I have found that my first things that kind of go off are perfect for my little ones because they've cooled down enough for them to eat. You know, but there's always a saying, Growing up, you've all heard the story of the three bears, you know. Baby bear's food was just right, Papa bear's food was hot, and Mama bear's food was cold. And now I understand the story completely. Here, slide these out. I'm going to spread them around. I always like to make sure I lay everything nice and flat to bring up the crisp them out.
You have a question? Is there going to be a fight over who gets the cinnamon swirl French toast?
If they can identify them. The nice thing about, because these are both cinnamon swirl, but you can't tell. And the only reason I know they're cinnamon swirl is because I picked them from the cinnamon swirl side. But I don't know if they'll be able to tell. And one thing is when I take them off, I'm going to sprinkle them because I do love the little cinnamon sugar flavor. I sprinkle them with a little cinnamon sugar. You know, a lot of people do powdered sugar. I prefer cinnamon sugar over mine because it just enhances the flavor. I love to make my French toast with a cinnamon sugar bread or cinnamon swirl bread. It's just my favorite way to make French toast. So like a lot of times if I don't have fresh bread, I always buy it's like Pepperidge Farm cinnamon swirl bread or their cinnamon chip bread, one of those things. But that makes a really good French toast. Let's let it sit. The trick for nice crispy fried potatoes is you really got to avoid playing with them. You want to let them sit and crisp up on one side and try not to stir them, but let them fry and then flip them over and fry. So it's one of those things. It's hard to, not play with them in the pan. Let's check these guys, see how they're looking. Beautiful. So there's our first round of not cinnamon toast, but French toast. I'm going to cook this one a little bit longer on here, but I'm going to sprinkle this one with our cinnamon sugar. So just a nice little coating of it, and it just soaks into it, and it adds just a little bit of extra flavor and a touch of sweetness, which is nice because there's not a lot of sugar in it, because again, it's your syrup that you add on that really brings in the flavor. Okay. Let's see how this is looking good. A little bit longer. You always never know exactly. Let me grab over here. I'm going to grab my spices for my potatoes. I'm going to do oregano, and let's see. I'm out of pepper. So do I have pepper in my other? You know what? Let me see if I fill this up. I'm surprised I'm out of pepper. Out of pepper. Oh, am I out of pepper? I got to add it to my list. Been using a lot of pepper. I'm going to add in my oregano. Actually, let me flip it first, and then I'm going to add my oregano so that it can steam up and add the flavor in. But I'm going to just slide under, and we're going to flip it. You see how we're getting those kind of crispy edges right there? And again, flip it, pat it down, let it crisp up. Don't stir. And keep your heat lower than what you think. I'm cooking these on a 4, so like a medium low. You don't need it to be on high to crisp up, because if you do that, your potatoes will get crispy on the outside, but they'll be rock hard in the middle. Now we're going to sprinkle our oregano over. We're going to let that steam up so it kind of hydrates those herbs, bring out that flavor a little bit more. Here we go. Got our second round of French toast. Give it a good shake of cinnamon sugar over it. And then I'm going to take, and I always do this between each one, is a little bit of butter because it makes a better French toast. And we're going to add on our next round. And we'll let these guys cook up on it. But don't, I put a little bit of cinnamon sugar, but don't sprinkle it on there because you don't want the sugar on top, because if you put the sugar on top and cook it, it will caramelize on your bread, and then you can get some burnt taste to it. So you want to add it after the fact. Like our Swedish pancakes, when we make it, we add the sugar after it, but it adds just a great flavor to it. Okay, got these going on here, and while we're waiting, since I have time, I'm going to cut up my melon over here. So we have some fresh fruit. Since we got a little bit of extra time, and it needs to go. I think I may have waited too long. We'll see. So we're going to go through. We're going to cut up half and we'll make a little bit of a fruit bowl for it while our potatoes are cooking up. We've got a few minutes left on our frittata, and we can take that out of the oven, and then we'll be ready to serve up. There we go. So I have like a rule when I'm cutting up my like my melon to make it a little bit easier so it doesn't take very long. It just is like a quick method to use. Grab this. We're going to add in some other fruit as well, some golden kiwis. But if you just slice like this right along the side, and then you can just go with your blade right across, and it's a lot easier to cut it up.
You have a question? What's in the frittatas?
The frittatas, we have bacon, sausage, onions, and peppers for it. So just kind of and cheddar cheese. So really simple, but delicious. And then we kind of use those same seasonings in our hash browns since they work really well. They kind of fit in both ways. And that way you can use the same pan, limit your dishes. Let's see, got that. I'm going to put this one a little bit longer on that one. Okay. We'll get going here. We've got less than 5 minutes on our frittata. So we'll get our potatoes finished up here. We can get that out of the oven. And we'll get our fruit bowl together. I'm going to cut up some golden kiwis. My kids have been obsessed with them recently on there. Teddy and Jack have been loving them for it. If you've never had one, they're like a regular kiwi, but instead of being as tart, they're a little bit sweeter. There we go. We'll get that on here. And then we'll be ready for brunch.
You have a question? How old are your kids?
So I have quite the range. Our youngest is 2. And then we have a 4-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a soon-to-be 16-year-old. So we've got quite the age range.
For a crispy French toast, what's the best way to do that?
So crispy is you just want to make sure you butter your griddle well, and then you want to use a thicker bread so that it's not like a brioche is going to give you a softer French toast. A sourdough will give you a more like a crisper, firmer French toast. Make sure your bread is thinner so that you can get it kind of thicker all the way through, and make sure you have a well griddle pan. You can also do a battered French toast where you add in a little bit of flour. You almost make like a pancake batter type thing, and you fry it to give you like those French toast sticks. So it's kind of a completely different method on it to give you that like French toast stick, like, you know, the ones that you buy in the freezer for it. You can do that as well for it, but you want to use a firmer type of bread for it. There's a lot of different methods on French toast and a lot of different ways to do it. And I feel like you got to decide what type of French toast you like. You know, some people love like the French toast casserole or the brioche ones that you get at like the, you know, you go to those bougie breakfasts. I personally like more of a individual, not a super soft one, but a thinner French toast or a sourdough where the bread is more firm.
A couple questions. Is this a special occasion, or do you do brunches every weekend? And then, do you prefer a griddle or a skillet?
So we typically do our brunches on the weekends because my kind of rule of thumb is I cook 2 meals a day, either lunch and a dinner or a brunch and a dinner, and so this is kind of where today is brunch on it because we've got some sports this afternoon. And then as far as a griddle or a skillet, I really like the griddle. This is our here because it is easier to take care of and manage. With a skillet, you've got to really make sure that you season it well, that you know, take care of it, wash it the right way. And you don't have to do that all with a griddle on it. And it doesn't weigh 1,000 pounds. And so I personally like this just because it's just an easier manage to do it on there. But I mean, I feel like it's it's what you're used to on it. Like we didn't really have cast iron cooking growing up, so I just never had it. We always had griddles on there. So I always like it that way. Now I do use a couple cast iron things. I have a couple cast iron Dutch ovens that are slightly different than your old school cast iron frying pans. But I do love like a griddle. Okay, let's get a couple or golden kiwis, and then we're about to take out our frittatas because there's less than a minute left on there. And then we can probably serve up because I can get my last French toast going, but I need to keep you guys around for those to toast up on here. But let's get our golden kiwis. So I always peel mine. So I just kind of go and slide around. That way my kids don't have to do it themselves. Yeah. There's people out there who'll eat the skin. More power to them. There we go.
Judy sent you.
Well, thank you, Judy. We appreciate that. Okay. Got my kiwis here. Let's go check out our frittatas. They should be nice and ready. Grab my griddle. Push OK. I'm going to give them a little tap. Make sure they're firm. They are nice and firm, which is nice. They're firm, but still like, what I say smooth and soft. So they're not overbaked. They're not dry, which is what you want. Because if you overbake them, that's when they're going to be dry. And you don't want dry eggs. You don't want to overbake things, but you can see they're still lush and delicious. So we have our frittatas right out here on here. They are full of sausage, bacon, onions, peppers, and we use garlic salt, cheddar cheese, and some pepper. There we go. I put my next round of cinnamon or French toast. Keep saying cinnamon toast. Put a little bit of cinnamon sugar on it. I'm going to grease my pan here. And I'm going to try to get all three of these guys up here on it. Because I think if I do a little swirly, I can get all three. There we go. And then we can serve up while these are cooking because everything else is just about ready. Let me just get this cleaned up. I'll finish up cutting my golden kiwis to finish up our little fruit bowl, and then we'll serve up. Our potatoes look like they're done here.
What temp and time for the frittatas?
So the frittatas, I do them for 15 minutes at 350. And they're in my mini loaf pan, so they cook a little bit faster than if you do them in like a pie dish or, like a skillet. Here we go. Get these guys up. Add them in here. Voila. And take our heat off. Slide this over here. Let me get my shovel. And let me get a little spatula. Do I have one? No, to get out my frittatas. And then we're going to serve up. So I'll grab a spoon, plate, my cutting board. And let me bring this over here. Turn that down. So much deliciousness. Okay. We'll add this right over here. And let me bring my frittatas just a little bit closer so that I'm not reaching. They look and smell fantastic. Slide these guys out of the way. That way I can get them out. I'm very excited for breakfast today. I'm excited for the cinnamon swirl. Okay, for breakfast today, we have our homemade French toast on our sourdough bread. This is our cinnamon swirl sourdough bread. I'm going to put a little dollop of butter on there, and we will drizzle it with a little bit of maple syrup for the perfect French toast. And then we are going to serve it up with some of our homemade hash browns that are made from our potatoes, onions, peppers, bacon that we used in our frittata. And then we're going to serve it up with our lovely frittata here, made with eggs, bacon, sausage, onions, and peppers, the same base that we used for our potatoes. And then, of course, some fresh fruit for the perfect little Saturday brunch. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of our recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made, and you can watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets. We've got my griddle pan, my hex clad, I even got my mini loaf pan, all the different things that I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here.